6:30. If everybody could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Matt Doublestein. Andrew McGee.
Here.
Lauren Foley.
Here.
Steve Milstead. Danny Powers.
Here.
Philip Snowberger.
Here.
Dave Taylor.
Here. We'll move to approval of the agenda. Any changes?
I'd like to make a motion to combine PC 22-075-CP and PC 22-076-DP, all points Anson Building 11.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then, has everyone had a chance to look at the November 14th meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the November 14th meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. All right. Is there any public request to speak on topics not related to agenda item? Seeing none in the room and none online. And there's no presentations, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Item A, PC 22-070-ZA Good Property. This was continued from last month's meeting. We're going to treat this similar to as its first time with a public hearing. I will say that if you did make comments at the last meeting, you're certainly incorporating those. So you certainly can come up and speak again, but if you don't feel the need to come up and say what you said last month, you don't have to. Those will be incorporated. So as the petitioner, if you'd like to go ahead and approach the podium.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do I need to get sworn in or anything, or we're good to go?
If you want to go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian. I'm here this evening representing Braun Property Development in connection with petition PC 22-070. Thank you for hearing our case. Here with me tonight is Adam Braun and Scott Noel of Braun Property Development, and also Rick Ellis of Y Engineers. If I can ask Todd to move the slides, that'd be terrific. So, members of the Planning Commission, I'll kind of abbreviate some of the opening remarks because I know you've heard this before, but just to remember, it's about a 23 to 24 acre site. It's currently zoned AG, and it's east of County Road 650 East. It's west of 700. It's just north of Prairie Chase. It's right across 650 from Trailside Development. It's just south of Allen Acres, and it's just west of the Jackson Run, a new development. And so to kind of think about that and what is around us, there's sort of traditional single-family homes to the north and to the east. There's some paired patio homes to the south, and then there's townhomes and cottage homes and traditional single-family homes to the west and Trailside. So there's certainly a mix of housing types around this proposed neighborhood of townhomes. They're either there or on their way. Next slide, please, Todd. This is a view looking northwest to the neighbors that front on County Road 650. Next slide, please. This is a view looking north to the neighbors on Allen Acres. And the next slide, please. That is a view looking south to the paired patio homes of Prairie Chase. The next slide, please, Todd. In considering zonings, as I'm sure the Plan Commission's aware, you look at what the comprehensive plan is, what the existing zoning around the site is, And in this case, as I mentioned, to the west is Trailside, that's a PUD. To the north is AG, an agricultural zoning, which is what our site is zoned. And to the east is R3, and to the south is R3. Next slide, please. So at our last hearing, I'd like to spend a few minutes on this slide, and if this will work, I'll kind of go through some differences here. So our last plan was over here on the left side, and the plan before you this evening is over here on the right side. And if I can walk through the differences in those two plans, we listened to the neighbors, we listened to the plan commission, and we made some changes. So the first change is that this plan had 103 townhomes. This plan has 96 townhomes. The green space in this plan was about 10 acres. The green space in this plan is about 11 acres. The density, the number of homes per acre, was about 4.3 in this plan. It's about 4 in this plan. But one of the most significant changes, members of the Plan Commission, is if you look here along the west side, I think there was about 14 townhomes that backed up to our neighbors on 650. Braun has eliminated all those townhomes that backed up to the neighbors and instead moved them over here where there's now about 12. And so instead of looking at the backs of townhomes that are close to their backyards, they would now look across the green area here, then across this north-south road, and they would look at the front of the townhomes here. That separation before was about 80 feet from the homes to the homes. So there was about 80 feet distance from the backs of our neighbors here on 650 to the backs of these townhomes. Now that separation is more than double. It's about 107.
Recording in progress.
And in addition, the green area that separated these homes was about 32 feet. Now this green area here is twice that width. It's about 60 feet. Additionally, the commission, we understood, was concerned about this emergency access. So Braun folks met with the town and have now designed it so there's a full access up here at the northwest end. So there will be two accesses, two full accesses to this community, one here and then one here through Prairie Chase. Whereas before we had one through Prairie Chase and then an emergency access right here. Could you please go to the next slide? It's slide 8, please. Oh, perfect, thank you. So to kind of put that all in a summary, they decreased the number of townhomes in the development. They decreased the density. They added a second access point at the northwest side along 650 East, so we have access from there. The neighbors along 650, which are neighbors to the west, will now look at the front of townhomes rather than the rear, and they will be about twice the distance from those new townhomes as they were before. And in addition, there will be a much wider landscaped area separating the backs of their yards to the fronts of the townhomes. They've also relocated a pond to the south slightly to increase more usable green area up here in the north corner of the site, north side of the site. Next slide, please. There was also understandably some concern about drainage. I've been out to this site on several occasions after some rains and seen to the north a fair amount of flooding in the backyards. And I need to walk you through this just for a minute. What this depicts here is an improved ditch south of Prairie Chase. So south of our neighbors to the south, where those Prairie Patio homes, this is an improved ditchway heading south towards the Optimus Park and then on beyond. And if Todd would go to the next slide, this slide shows just looking north now. So I'm standing in Prairie Chase and I'm looking north. And the improvements to the ditch are in this area right here. And you can see as you're up here, and I'll show you the next slide in a minute, there's a much wider water course there. So the next slide, please, Todd. That shows in that area, that's wider. And when it gets to this area where the ditch is improved, it narrows down quite a bit. The effect of all that is shown, I think, in the next slide. So what we have, this is the way it looks currently, members of the planning commission. You can see kind of an area where this water runs and then runs south over here, comes down along here. Not really a defined water course area. The next slide, please, Todd. What that creates right now is this is a map that depicts the floodway and the floodplain that currently exist on this site. And so that area where those blue dots are, and you can't see it very well, but there's a purple cross hatching in there. That's the floodway, and so that's where water gets out of that area I showed you a minute ago in the aerial photograph, and goes all the way to the extent of those purple areas, which then include the floodplain. In conjunction with the county surveyor and the developers of themselves and the developers, Horton and Trailside, these folks in the county surveyor have come up with a plan where this floodway, which has already been, some improvements have already been made to this ditch I described south of Prairie Chase. If Todd would go to the next slide, this will turn into that. And so that area, the green area, depicts the floodway, and the blue area depicts the floodplain. As you can see, with these improvements that will happen in what they call a two-stage ditch, which I've learned means that there's a bottom level of the ditch where the water will typically go to, and then there's a little wider level as you get deep, higher up in the ditch. That's why it's called a two-stage ditch. But what it will do is vastly improve the drainage that runs through this area and improve the drainage to our neighbors to the north in Allen Acres. So Todd, if you could go back one slide, please, if that's doable. So that area, floodplain, floodway, now go to the next slide, please. With the efforts of the surveyor, this development, the improvements will be shrunk to what we believe will be this area, which we think will be a vast improvement of the drainage of the area in this site and around this site. The next slide, please, Todd. So now instead of our neighbors looking at the backs of those homes, as I mentioned, they will be looking across a green area and across a roadway to the front of these homes, and this is a rendering of what those will look like. These homes will be about 1,700 square feet to 1,800 square feet. They will cost between $275,000 and $325,000. Next slide, please. This is a diagram, a plan of what typical interior will look like. You can see it has a two-car attached garage, and then the main level and upper level are depicted in two different renderings or two different layouts, I guess is a better way to say that. Next slide, please. When you look at rezonings, of course, you look at the comprehensive plan. This is a special area 3. That's what it's referred to in your comprehensive plan. It's called a mixed-use legacy core area. It's the Eastern Gateway area. It actually calls for mixed density residential, and I think that's what's occurring. You have Trailside with 3 different kinds of density and 3 different kinds of housing. You got Prairie Chase with paired patio housing. You've got Jackson Run that has a couple of different kinds of housing. And in this snip from the comprehensive plan, or this excerpt, it actually refers to that it calls for single family, attached single family, condominiums, and townhomes. And so this would be right next door to attached single family with being next door to Prairie Chase. And these are townhomes, which I think fit in what the comprehensive plan calls for. Next slide, please. One of the questions was raised was why were we considering R4 versus R3? In looking at the Whitestown zoning ordinance, the townhomes are permitted in R4. That's the bottom of that slide you're looking at. And the R4 contemplates a density of about up to 7 homes per acre. This is at the lower end of that. This is about 4 homes per acre. But R4 is the category, the zoning classification, which allows for a townhome development. Next slide, please. In any zoning, you sort of look at what the values are and what that will mean in terms of assessed value. This site right now is assessed at $38,700. It's a farm field. It's not really a very well located farm field now, given the improvements that are coming around it. But using an average price of house of about $300,000, the estimated assessed value of the site after full development could reach into the $28 million plus or minus kind of range. So it will vastly increase the assessed value of the site upon development. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Todd, could you go back to that slide for just 1 second? Also, I looked at the assessed value. I just picked the homes that were alongside our western border. And so these are from the assessor's record. They range from $190,000, almost $200,000 to about $360,000. And as I said, our estimated price ranges are about $275,000 to $325,000. So they are certainly comparable to assessed values of homes that will border our development. Next slide, please. We appreciated working with the staff, Jill and Lori and Desiree, on this development. The staff has reviewed this and provide a favorable recommendation in their staff report. They include in the report that this demonstrates responsible growth, meets increasing demand for various types of housing, and it says that essentially this kind of development is consistent and compatible with the comprehensive plan. The staff did ask us to commit to a multi-use path from Main Street to the southeast portion of the property, and Braun Development has agreed with that requested condition or commitment. Next slide, please, Todd. So again, thank you for your time this evening. To sort of summarize it, we respectfully suggest that the townhomes are compatible with the surrounding mix of different houses in this area of Whitestown. It's the area that it's in is within a special development area, which contemplates a mix of residential use and specifically mentions townhomes as a possible use. It will substantially increase the tax base of this site for the town. Braun Property Development, the county surveyor, and other developers to the west and east will invest substantial sums in improving the condition and efficiency of this ditch. Some of that's already happened, and we believe that will significantly reduce the size of the floodway in the floodplain area and improve the drainage in general in that area. This new site plan now includes an entrance and exit at the north and south ends of the proposed community. The revised site plan reduces the number of townhomes, and now we would suggest provide substantial separation and green area between the neighboring properties. And lastly, as I mentioned, the staff recommends approval. We'll try to answer any questions you might have, and thank you again for your time this evening.
Staff report.
Good afternoon. My name is Desiree Irkos, and I'll be presenting docket 22-070ZA Good Property. The petitioner is requesting a review of a zoning amendment to rezone the described area from general agriculture or AG to high-density mixed residential R4. The site in question is approximately 23.75 acres. The intent of the rezone is to allow a residential neighborhood with approximately 96 townhomes. The site in question is located on the east side of County Road 650 East in Whitestown. The applicant is Braun Property, LLC, on behalf of Haley Good. The site is located south of Allen Acres, west of Trailside, north of Prairie Chase, and east of Jackson Run residential developments, so the surrounding area is characterized by residential uses of varying densities. The proposed changes from the November continuance. The proposed units have been reduced from 103 units to 96, which is a 7-unit difference. The density has been reduced from 4.32 units per acre to 4.03 units per acre. The Northern Emergency Road is now a full access road with a 50-foot right-of-way, and there is increased landscaping along the buffer zones of the west and south property lines. Staff is recommending favorable recommendation at this time. The proposed rezone demonstrates compliance to the comprehensive plan by meeting the mixed development, transportation, and circulation goals of the Development Special Area 3. The rezone is appropriate given that the current conditions being provided by the residential surrounding uses and other mixed residential uses. The rezone represents the most desirable use by increasing the diversity of housing options within the town limits. The addition of residential uses in the area will not harm property values. The rezone demonstrates responsible growth by meeting the increasing demands for various types of housing units within Whitestown and being located in an appropriate area. If Plan Commission chooses to go forward with a favorable recommendation, staff recommends adding the favorable condition that the applicant provide a multi-use path from Main Street to the southeast portion of the property, and that the layout and connections be decided by the Whitestown Parks Department and the petitioner prior to issuance of any permits. Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. I do have one person has requested to speak here. Just as a reminder to everyone in the room, for the public hearing, we do allow 20 minutes per our rules, so please allow time for others to speak as well. First one, Pat Howenstein. You state your name and your address.
Pat Howenstein, 2587 South, 650 East. First, I want to thank the commission for stopping the quick advancement of this zoning that the staff had recommended. While I see that some changes have been made, they are not changes that should allow zoning be changed to R4. This is a small property, a floodplain area, no less. It does not warrant an overpopulated development. I see no additional plans to address the current flooding that is on the existing homes to the north, west, and south. We live there. We see the flooding. Trailside has not helped. Prairie Chase has not helped. You saw the map of the flood zone. Half of this area is floodplain. The engineer has probably drawn up on paper the property sewer storm system. This is reality. This is recent reality. Not this summer, because we haven't had rain. This spring, we had floods. This will not help our homes from being flooded. It will probably worsen. The new entry from 650 would be built across some of the worst flooding, which includes the bridge across Jackson Run, travels from west to east. Now it is proposed to create a solid paved road, no surface draining, and you have placed a road without any turn lanes and encroaching into the residents' driveway, which would be cut off by the turning traffic right across their driveway. There's also should be land allowance along the south border for raised barriers with fence and trees to prevent their common area blending into the south homeowners' pasture area. We were presented this plan as a 3-4-bedroom townhome to be purchased between $275,000 and $325,000. Turns out it's not going to be that. Once again, Braun and Horton are doing the bait and switch scheme. We were told Prairie Chase was to be a 55 and older community of homes to be purchased from $250,000 to $300,000 with HOA fees of $1,000 a month. Home ownership creates a community that's more stable and one with pride. Now Horton has, under the radar, changed Prairie Chase to a more transit and one with questionable management. Before any rental property is approved, the town needs to set some restriction guidelines, policies, and then enforce them. Setting a rental in middle of an over 70-year-old community of houses is not a way to have a desirable housing or community. Following the same thought on attachment G, number 4, this overcrowded rental development will indeed have a negative effect on our property values for those of us that have lived here for over 40 years and have been part of the Whitestown rural community for those many years. As stated in the petitioner's own proposal, the town's comprehensive plan for this site is low-density residential, less than 1.75 per acre. Medium to small-size lot with single-family detached house, as there are houses there now. Why are we not adhering to the 2022 plan? Why do the plan if the developers come in, change it to fatten their bottom line? Developers do not live here or even in the state. Why do the surveys of the residents if their voices aren't heard? Stop R3, R4 zoning. Let the developer become creative and build an R1 or R2 community of purchased homes that blend with the existing neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional people who wish to speak on this item? In the room? Online? Okay. We will close the public hearing. Petitioner would like to respond to some of the comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps, Todd, if we could go back to the slide where I think it's maybe 7, yeah, maybe 7 and 8. That's great, and yeah, that's terrific. Thank you. So in no particular order, but trying to address some of the comments, I certainly agree with our neighbor that said this area is in a floodplain area. In fact, I think that the diagram we showed as part of our presentation clearly delineated that there's a very large floodplain area. But I'm advised by the engineer from Y Engineering that between the county surveyor's work and the work as part of this development and the Prairie Chase development and the Trailside development and Jackson Run development, that a long-term problem is actually going to get fixed. And so the floodplain area will shrink to that exhibit. I didn't prepare that. Our engineer prepared that showed that really substantial reduction in floodplain area. As to the comment about where there's flooding up here, I'm sure that's true. And I'm also advised by our engineer that there will be a significant box over, but here, all the way over to Prairie Chase, and Rick, if I say something wrong, interrupt me, that will alleviate that drainage problem up in this area right here. So that has been thought of and recognized. So that we believe that current flooding area, Todd, if you could go forward a couple of slides, please. Stop right there. Yeah, please, right there. That's perfect. So this area here, it's a very sizable area, floodway and floodplain. But the engineers, along with the county surveyors, believe, if we'll go to the next slide, that significant area will be reduced to this area here. Should alleviate the flooding in this area, and this area over here, as well as maybe a development. I mean, you can't build in a floodway or floodplain, so this will have to be in and correctly installed in order to be allowed to develop. There was a comment about that the developers don't even live here, but that's just not factually accurate. The Braun family lives in Boone County, and they're the developers of this. As to the concern about whether it's a rental community or not, that hasn't been determined. We covered that in our last hearing. But if in the event it was, this developer is willing to agree to the commitments that were agreed to on the Peabody property that relate to the operation of the site by a single family for rent community, where it, as one of the commitments was, the homes would be owned by a legal entity or a partnership. They're fine with that. There won't be, a bunch of different landlords. There was several, 5 or 6 commitments that were made in that Peabody case. The Braun company and developers willing to agree to those commitments if this neighborhood is developed as a rental community. We understand our neighbors' concerns, and I hope that what we've presented tonight is reflective of them hearing what they said, hearing what this plan commission said, and made really some significant changes to their development in terms of separating their homes from their neighbors and providing screening and a buffering area, and also then providing more information about what will happen with this development in terms of mitigating a flooding situation and a drainage problem. So I think my time is probably up, and with that, we'd try to answer any questions you might have, and thank you again for your time.
All right, open this up for the commission to any questions, comments for the petitioner.
I am appreciative of the fact that you did address one of my concerns from the last meeting, was that secondary entrance. I guess just a little clarification. It's kind of hard to see on this drawing is how that, we'll call it the north entrance, interacts with the neighboring property. I mean, just by looking at this, it looks really close, and I'm not sure. Just maybe a little more clarification on that. And then I think another question I had was, there was the request for the commitment for the walking trail from Main Street to the south end of the property. Where exactly does that fall in this development as well?
Adam Braun Property Development, 1155 Parkway Drive, Suite 300, Zionsville. So the first question regarding the interaction. So, obviously there's some surveying and engineering that has to be done to figure it out, but the discussion that was had is that center turn lane that comes down Main Street would be extended up to service this entrance as well, so that you have that additional turn lane capacity to help people coming in and out of this property. But obviously we'll look very closely at that with Public Works when it comes to designing it to make sure that it functions as well as possible. And then the walking path, the plan for that is for it to actually function alongside of the runway of that ditch. So it would come in, and it would basically, you'd have a walkway that would go along that ditch, come with it, and then it would come down to that southeast corner, which is what the commitment says is getting a pathway to the southeast corner of the property. So we'd use the runway of that ditch to help with that as well.
And then as far as the landscaping that runs along the west side of the property, between the neighbors to the west, looks like you're just showing trees there. Is that just going to be a flat at grade level, or is Is
So
there
we
room to put a berm in
looked
there?
at the idea of potentially doing a berm. The only question we had when looking at that is if there needs to be any sort of drainage that is done, a swale or anything along that. So we didn't want to necessarily commit to anything that was going to affect the ability to drain the site appropriately. But we are definitely open to looking into providing that or screening in the form of a fence or something along those lines, on those property lines. So we're not sure exactly what kind of swales will be needed or if anything along those property boundaries to make sure the site drains well.
That's all I got for right now.
I appreciate some decrease in the density, but this is a decrease of 7 units. I guess I still have a little heartburn about the number of units in that area. I mean, are we comfortable with the amount of traffic now that that's full access coming from that?
Yeah, I think with that second access, it should function appropriately, especially with the improvement of Main Street. That trail side, they constructed a 3-lane segment. And so we'd require them to construct a 3-lane segment, continue it along their frontage. And so with that extra turn lane, and the improvement of Main Street from what it is, will help greatly. And it looks like with the box culvert there that it'll replace, looks like it'll replace the existing culvert bridge that there is today and add capacity to help increase the drainage from the west side to the east side. And with this two-stage ditch, I mean, I've been out there earlier this spring. We had at least one time where it rained at least 2+ inches. And from where there is no ditch, it just flows over land to where they constructed the ditch in Prairie Chase. I mean, it really helped keep the water contained within the ditch as the two-stage ditch is supposed to. Because there is a county legal drain, a very old legal drain that runs up here. And I know the developer has been in talks with the surveyor's office because we've also been up there several times in Allen Acres with the drainage and trying to make improvements. And one of the areas concerned is this field. Just when it rains, the flood spreads out quite a bit because there's no defined channel, and the two-stage ditch helps shrink that in quite a bit.
Okay. This may be a question for council. If as part of this recommendation, could a commitment be added that the density is not any higher than what's proposed? If they're saying that we can't go for an R3 because it's not, townhomes are not allowed or UDO under R3, I wouldn't want the developer to come back and say, well, never mind, we have this different project now we want, and it's still within the R4 limits. So would we be able to add commitment?
Yeah, you can do that. We just want to be clear that that's
Okay.
one of the conditions.
So the 4.03 density. Okay.
And I have a question for staff. When Prairie Chase went in, was that a PUD or was that not?
I believe it's currently zoned R3, so it would not be a PUD.
Okay. And I guess I have another question for Steve. I know they said that they are open to entertaining the commitments that if it were to go a rental option, that were passed with the Peabody PUD, what's a good avenue of trying to capture all of that? Or is that something that we need to see that writing?
So, I do have those we could read those tonight into the record, and you guys could approve those as additional conditions. Certainly another way is for them to make the commitment before, so there's conditions, like you placing the conditions, and there's the developer making the commitment, and they could make the commitment in writing before it went to the council. But certainly at that point, it's up to the council on whether to require that commitment or not. So you wanted to, sorry, I was looking for those, which, but we could, what we could do is read those specifically into the record and say that those are additional conditions. That's what you would need to do.
Okay.
And I can read what those are if you would like me to.
Yeah. I think that would probably be a good idea.
Brian, I want to make sure I'm reading the correct ones. Yeah. So what the Peabody commitments were, that in the event the real estate on the west side of County Road 575 or any portion thereof is developed for what was titled an SRF community, which means, which was defined as single family residential community where individual homes are held for rent and not sale. Such real estate would be subject to the following commitments. One, the home shall be owned by a legal entity or partnership and not individuals. Two, all lawns and mulch beds shall be maintained by the SFR owner. Three, each home in the SFR community shall have an irrigated front yard. Four, the SFR community shall be professionally managed and maintained by the SFR owner and its designees and contractors, and subject to the terms of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, no less stringent than those applicable to owner-occupied single-family residential community, to an owner-occupied single-family residential community. And five, if any portion of the real estate is developed for an SFR community, then such SFR community shall be comprised of contiguous areas and lots owned by the SFR owner, and no intermingling of homes, areas, or lots owned by another person or legal entity. So I think, if to summarize, the idea was that it would be, if you were going to make it for rent only, it would be owned by a single entity that would own all of the lots, would maintain the property, and you wouldn't have half the homes under, individual ownership and half and different standards applying to different homes.
Thank you.
So you said you agree to the Peabody, the same commitments. Sorry, I didn't ask the density commitment that I asked about. Would that be something? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve docket PC 22-070ZA. Recommendation, sorry. With the staff recommendation of the walking trail, the commitments as Steve read as far as pertaining to if the community were to go as a for rent community, as well as Andrew's point of the density being no more than 4.03. Yep. 4.03 units per acre. I think that captured all of them.
I'm sorry, did I hear that? Was that, you were asking me if that was sufficient?
I think that captured everything.
Yes, I think that you did, yes. I would agree.
I'll second.
Okay. And that was a favorable recommendation?
Favorable recommendation.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, favorable recommendation with the commitments. All right, moving on to new business. Item A, PC 22-074-CP. Warhorse Storage. That's not a typo, right? Warhorse Storage.
Yes, that's correct. Wait for Todd to pull up the slideshow. Good evening, my name is Chad Mays. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates located at 250 East 96th Street, Suite 580, Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm here representing Warhorse Venture Partners, and more specifically, Warhorse Image Storage Project Team. Eric Carr, the project owner, and my colleague Liam Sawyer are on the call. We're here to present on the concept plan petition. Next slide, please. So the project is located at 5875 South Perryworth Road. It's on the east side of South Perryworth Road and just to the north of the future Juniors Way public right-of-way. It's located to the west of the multifamily development known as the E, and to the south of Schumacher Homes of Whitestown. I believe that has yet to be constructed. Next slide, please. Here's a zoomed in aerial of the approximate project location. Again, it's to the east of Perryworth Road, and you can kind of see the rough grading of the future proposed Juniors Way right-of-way. Next slide, please. So the project is going to consist of a three-story self-storage facility on 3 acres. It's currently zoned as MU Core, and it resides in the I-65 corridor overlay. The building square footage is 30,165 square feet with 17 parking spaces, one of which being the required ADA spot. Next slide, please. Here's an approximate location of the project overlaid on the zoning map. You'll see the I-65 corridor overlay called out, as well as the MU Core zoning. Next slide, please. Here's the overall site plan. You can see the full ingress-egress drive along South Perryworth Road. The South Perryworth Road acceleration-deceleration lane that is shown there is part of the Perryworth Road Improvement Project and not the Warhorse Image Storage site project. There's a proposed cross-access easement to the property to the south from that access drive, as well as a loop drive around the site, or around the building rather. The proposed parking is located to the north, west, and south side of the site. There's also an outdoor storage area proposed directly to the north of the loop drive. This will have a 6-foot fence surrounding it. There is also a 6-foot fence surrounding the to the east, which is planned north, between the multifamily development known as the E and the proposed building. The site's been master planned as part of the project for the E development, and that master wet detention pond is located to the northeast of the site. Next slide, please. Here's a conceptual primary plat. This is not part of the petition tonight. It is a separate petition, but I wanted to point out the existing utility easement as well as the urban regulated drainage easement on the east side of the property. This is where most of the utilities to serve the building will come from. Next slide, please. This is a slide showing example architectural elevations. The top one will be the west elevation, and the colors and materials might not necessarily be what is proposed at the development plan, but this kind of provides the aesthetics of what the building is proposed to use. So the west elevation, which is the top elevation, will face South Perryworth Road. This will be the main entrance. The elevation below it is the north elevation. This will be facing the Schumacher Homes. It'll be where the utilities come in to service the building, and it also provides another access to the interior self-storage area. Next slide, please. This next slide is showing the east elevation on the top. This will be the side that faces the multifamily development known as the E. The south elevation is shown just below it. This will be the side that faces the future Juniors Way public right-of-way. Another access point for the interior self-storage area. Next slide, please. So I'd like to thank staff for providing guidance and clarifications throughout the concept plan review. As you can see here, they're providing a favorable recommendation for the project, pending a height variance of 4 feet, exceeding 4 feet of the zoning ordinance, as well as approval for the primary plat. Eric or myself are available to answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.
Staff report.
The applicant is proposing to construct a self-storage facility on the northeast side of Perryworth Road. With the self-storage use, there is a limitation that all units need to be enclosed with the structure, so they can't be the drive-up, just like he demonstrated with the elevations. The applicant is also proposing an outdoor storage space on site. The site was rezoned to MU Core last year and is also part of the I-65 overlay, which means that there's additional architectural requirements. The applicant has filed for a primary plat to subdivide this area and a BZA variance for the structure height. Staff is providing a favorable recommendation for docket PC 22-074-CP Warhorse Self-Storage. Staff finds the proposed concept plan is in compliance with the UDO except for the building height, which will need to be addressed prior to development plan phase.
Open the public hearing for this item. I don't have any requests to speak on this item before me. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none in the room, online, none. We will close the public hearing. Open it up to the Planning Commission for questions or comments. This is just pure curiosity right now. I know this is not part of this approval, but I see you're applying for a variance to the BZA to increase the height. What will that be, or do you know right now?
Yes, thank you for the question. The height is, for the UDO, I believe is 40 feet is the max. Right now the building's proposed at 44. That'll be fully detailed out during the BZA process as well as the development plan.
Okay, thank you. There's no other.
I will just make a general comment that the building elevations that you showed, I do appreciate the additional architectural features. I see a lot of these storage units that look more like a warehouse than anything. We all know what those look like. So, but I don't have any questions.
There's no others. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve PC 22-074-CP Warhorse Storage.
Second.
Okay, so motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. We'll move on to items B and C. It's one presentation. PC 22-075-CP, All Points Hanson Building 11, and PC 22-076-DP. Petitioner, approach the podium.
Hey, hi, my name is Terry Aber with folks from Browning. We're located at 8940 River Crossing Boulevard, Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm here with John Coho, developer, and Allen Fedhajics with Kimley Horn. So we didn't bring any kind of presentation or anything to go through, but if you guys could maybe bring up the staff report, I can maybe walk you through the plan and the location of things, just to give you a little bit of orientation, but I'm sure that's all covered there. we've, we've been, you know, it's, you know, we've actually done like a lot of development in the Anson Park with these industrial buildings, so this is our building 11 that's in front of you. So the location that's been kind of highlighted there is at the corner of 450 and 575. And we're presently building the building just to the north of 450 is our Anson 10 building. This one will look fairly similar to it. And we also, it'll be fairly similar in size too. I think it's like 626,000 square feet. There'll be some, you know, extra road improvements brought along on 450. And then we're also seeking, I think it's 3 variances on this one through the PUD. And I'm sure that they'll go over that when they go through the staff report. One is for the building height, one is for the 600 feet proximity, and then there's also a landscape buffer that's kind of along with that. So again, you know, it's like I'm here mostly to answer questions or, you know, it's like if you have any kind of concerns, and then I'm be very glad to kind of listen to the staff report.
Okay. Thank you. Staff report.
The applicant is proposing to construct an approximate 626,000 square foot building for light industrial use. The site is located at the corner of County Road 450 and County Road 575. It is part of the All Points at Anson development in the Anson PUD, and then south of the site is the 65 Commerce Park development. The site will be dedicating full right-of-way along County Road 575. The proposed structure is also like a barbell shape, so it's not a typical box. It's got extensions out the top and bottom, so it kind of blocks the trailer views from the north and south. They are proposing trailers and loading bays, parking on the east and west sides of the building. As part of the development, the applicant is requesting a modification to the development standards, as mentioned. So within the Anson PUD, there's a provision called out as Section 19. We use the same provision with Anson Building 10. And so basically it allows a waiver by Plan Commission to deviate from the development standards. So due to being within 600 feet of the general agriculture district, or what's across the street from County Road 575, there's some extra provisions. So for height, loading berths, and screening. The PUD requires a maximum height of 45 feet when within 600 feet. The applicant is proposing a maximum height of 50 feet. The trailer parking and loading berths are not permitted within 600 feet of the west side of County Road 575, so they will be within that 600 feet, just like Anson Building 10 was. And then the screening required along this corridor, they're required to have a 6 to 8 foot tall berm. Instead, they're proposing a 3 foot tall berm and a 6 foot tall fence, so it'll be 9 feet tall. Staff is providing a favorable recommendation for dockets PC 22-075-CP and PC 22-076-GP. The development plan is in compliance with applicable standards, manages traffic, and the utilities have enough capacity. Staff is also providing a favorable recommendation for the development standards modification. Staff finds the modifications as presented will not substantially affect the integrity of the development, is appropriate given the site and its surrounding area, and the alternate plans are compatible and consistent. If Plan Commission approves the project, staff recommends adding a few conditions. Most of these conditions surround the notion that there's still right-of-way and drainage concerns that need to be handled by Boone County. So we want those to be handled and the town be kept in the loop going forward. The conditions are presented in the staff report and include that any future access on County Road 575E will need to be reviewed and approved by Public Works and Planning Departments. Grading for that berm along 575 is prohibited from being within that future right-of-way. And then the Drainage Board approval and all stormwater comments need to be addressed prior to grading, and any outstanding and future comments from Public Works will need to be addressed prior to construction.
Okay, thank you. The public hearing portion, is there anyone in the room who'd like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none in the room. Is there any online? Okay, none online. We'll close the public hearing and open questions and comments from the Plan Commission. One thing I do have to ask is, even though this was one presentation, we have to have 2 motions. Okay, one for the development and concept plans, and then one for the waivers. correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Another question I'll have then, on the waiver for the building height, can we, would petitioner be acceptable to specifying the not to exceed height of, sounds like 50 feet?
Yeah, that would work for us.
Okay, thank you.
What kind of fence building material would UDO allow? Because I know in the building south in All Points, or 65 Commerce Park Building 8, they've done a wood fence. And then when we did 65 Commerce Park Building 6, they did a more, I think it's a vinyl fence, but it looks like.
It's like a stone fence, almost. It has like a stone look to it.
Yeah, it looks stone, looks really nice. I think.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not, the fence to the north on Building 8's a wood fence, but it's more on the warehouse property. I just didn't know with this fence, while it's not going to be in the right of way, it's going to be more to the eastern, if that might be appropriate to.
Yeah, so in the UDO, we don't have requirements on material type, just height, so they are proposing the 6 foot tall. If you want to make that a condition and see if they're agreeable to matching that same thing that's south of them, you can do that instead of the wooden fence.
So where exactly, just real quick, does that fit? Does the fence fall then on the east side of the pond between the pond and the road, or is it on the west side of the pond between the pond and the building?
On the west side of the pond.
Okay.
Right, west. East side, sorry, yes, east side of the pond, west side of the road is what.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So we have the 3 foot berm, and then we're talking about a 6 foot fence there, and then we talked a little bit about keeping the grading outside of the future right of way area. And I think what I understand is that you'd like to kind of maybe have more of a vinyl looking fence with that stone finish instead of the wood
Correct.
fence. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any issue with working with that, I'm sure.
I don't know if that's something the commission would like to see.
And then you reminded me of one other question. All other architectural standards of Anson PUD will be adhered to, correct?
Yeah.
Correct, yep.
Okay. Just like the building to the north.
Exactly.
All right.
So just more of a procedural question, just so I'm on the same page, because there's a lot going on here. The waiver is just the vote by itself, correct?
Yeah, what I would do is if you want to proceed, I would do your first motion is to approve the concept and development plans with the additional condition. And then after you've approved that, do a motion to approve the waiver for the
Modifications.
modifications to the Anson PUD, all the alternative modifications to the Anson PUD as proposed in the development plan.
Because the first, you were saying the conditions that were in the development plan,
Yeah.
not specifically the waivers.
It does. It does specifically list in there 50 feet, for example, and what they're proposing on the height of the fence. So I think you're covered there.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve docket PC 22-075 CP and docket PC 22-076 DP concept plan and development plan for All Points at Anson Building 11 with the staff recommendations as presented in the development plan, as well as the commitment to match the fencing style of the property to the south.
Yeah.
Is it the parcel immediately?
It's building 6.
Building
It's not the immediate south. It's
So it's
two.
with the building 6.
With building 6.
Yeah, with the 65 Commerce Park Building 6.
Okay. With 65 Commerce Park Building 6. That style of fence.
I'll second.
So motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, first motion passes. I'll go ahead and make the next motion then. Make a motion to approve the three waivers, the development, or the three development standards modification waivers that were requested, just to make myself feel a little better. Building height not to exceed 50 feet. The required landscape buffer yard, and the eastern trailer parking and loading berth locations.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approved. All right. Looks like item D. This is have a good evening. Staff here, PC 22-080-TA, Chapter 8 UDO amendments.
So a couple months ago, we brought forward text amendments for the rest of the UDO, and we wanted to work on Chapter 8 signage a little bit more. So we're bringing that to you guys right now. It looks like a lot of redlining and crossed out, but most of it's just formatting and condensing tables. So we crossed stuff out and relocated it. But some of the changes we did actually make was we removed the design review board. We don't have a design review board, so we just replaced that with administrator, basically clerical. And then we also removed mentions of on or off premise signs, which has to do with Supreme Court case rulings. Just gearing on the side of caution there. And then we added some additional provisions for wall murals and projecting signs. So those are existing sign types. We just added more language for them. So mostly formatting, clerical, but we do request a favorable recommendation, and then this would be sent on to town council.
Took a look through it. I don't think I had any questions.
I'll make a favorable recommendation for the
Oh, sorry.
second hearing.
Thank you, sir. That's what I want you to do. Yeah.
That's what he
we
was-
will open up for public hearing in case there's anyone. There's no one in the room. Is there anyone online that would have any comments or questions on these amendments? Seeing none online and seeing none in the room, close the public hearing now for that. Apologize.
I will make a motion to send a favorable recommendation for the UDO text amendments as presented.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, favorable recommendation. So then, I guess Jill, continue on and with rules and procedures amendments.
So about once a year, we kind of look over the rules and procedures. We did find 3 minor changes we're proposing. The first being changing the responsibility of setting application fees. So it goes from instead of town council making that, it's now plan commission. You guys are gonna set your own fees now instead. And that was part of the UDO changes. So now we're just changing the rules and procedures to reflect that change from the UDO. The second change is adding language about public notice to account for applicants that own multiple parcels. So Adam Braun owns a parcel. He owns 3 other parcels around him. So you're going to do the distance from his furthest parcel. That's what we require in our application packet. But now we're just putting in the rules and procedures to kind of give that a little bit more standing. And then the third change we're recommending is to remove the public notice by sign on site. We talked about removing this provision last year, and then just a clerical error didn't remove it. So we're trying to remove it now. It's not something we've done in the past or required. So just cleaning that up. These are your rules and procedures, so it's up to your discretion whether to approve or disapprove them. They do not go on to town council.
I just had one question on the signs. I can see the reasoning for concept and development plan, but for rezone, that was discussed too before to take that out for a potential rezone on signage.
What section are you under?
The 5 notification by sign. The one that, yeah. Sorry, Article 8, Section 5. Page 7.
Yeah, we're just removing it for everything.
For everything.
No requirement for signage on site. Yeah, and that's not something we required. We've never printed out signs. We've never required an applicant to do it. At BZA, we're also going to recommend the same thing. So it kind of was approved last year, but without a clerical error, it just wasn't removed this time.
Personally, I kind of like the sign thing because it gets people to spark some interest. That's just my.
I kind of like it for a rezone.
Yes, for the concept and development plans and things like that, I don't know that it's necessary, but I do like the idea of it for a rezone. But I don't know if that's possible to do or not.
It's not something we've done or enforced in the past, so that would take staff kind of creating a process to do so. And put a burden on the applicants and staff to go out and check on that. But again, these are your rules and procedures. I've seen it done both ways. So obviously, like the city of Indianapolis does it, where I used to work in Kentucky does it, but I don't know if any other jurisdictions around here do it.
Zionsville, I think, requires it. They had a storage place.
I guess since I started out, I'd be fine moving forward with a favorable recommendation if that's modified to still maintain notification by sign for rezone only, not necessary for concept plan or development plan.
Primary primary class, that be included in signage or?
I don't feel like it would need to be.
I don't either.
And the only reason I agree with Andrew, I feel like rezone is one of those that becomes always the hot button issue with residents and neighbors.
But yeah, rezone only, nothing else.
I can make that change.
I would second that.
So it's a motion to approve. It's then you go to the council.
Oh, this one, sorry, this is our rules of procedures,
With,
yeah.
with the only change being that section 8.5 will remain except concept plan or development plan.
Correct. We can add the words rezone only.
Yeah, well, it reads, it currently read that if a petition or case to be heard by the WPC involves the rezoning of any property or the review of a concept plan or development plan, the petitioner shall. So you'll leave it in, but strike or the review of a concept plan or development plan.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, is there any other business or announcements?
Just one announcement. So Matt Doublestein did submit his letter of resignation, so he won't be coming back in 2023. If you guys know of anybody, let us know. This is a town council appointed position, but if you have any names, you can send them on to Todd. But Matt served on this board a long time, so he's a great asset.
Yes, we'll recognize the time that Matt has served on the Plan Commission, and we do appreciate his work on the Plan Commission.
That's all I have.
You did
Okay.
a good job. You do a good job.
Well, then, number 9. Last item on the agenda.
It's the one you like the most.
Come on, man.
I propose we adjourn.
Have a good evening.
Recording